Greetings everyone and welcome to my next installment in the video series where I rank card cycles for booster draft environment. In my previous video I ranked the murders at Karlov Manor uncommon signposts that were creatures, and now this time I will go through the other signposts which are non-creatures. There are 10 of them and let's go. The worst of the bunch is and I want to say worst, not the least good, because I think this card is actively bad. You know, not totally unplayable, of course, but it has its issues, and the issue is mainly that you don't want to pay 2 mana to tutor for a creature card, and it's of course only from the top 6 cards. You don't get to find the best creature from your deck. So from top 6 you will usually find a creature card, assuming you know you wouldn't put this card in a deck that doesn't have at least 15 creatures, so it's very unlikely to whiff entirely on this thing. But what you actually want to do with this card is that you want to hit a 2-drop, and let's say if you have 8 2-drops in the deck, then why would you be playing a breakout? It's a redundant card at that point. But if you have 4 2-drops, yeah, I guess this will give you a higher chance to play something that affects the board on turn 2. But then again, if it's like a 4 2-drops, you already also have a much higher chance to whiff on the 2-drop, and you maybe find something else. But at that point, of course, you just paid 2 mana for nothing. I mean, you didn't play 2 mana for nothing, but you didn't get to affect the board, and that is quite a big thing. So there's nothing good about this card that makes you want to spend 2 mana for the effect it offers you. At the 9th spot we have actually the very similar kind of effect. These I think were more playable back in the day when the limited formats weren't quite as fast as they have been for quite some time now. This is a totally acceptable effect. I have played this card in this format even, but it's always going to be a little bit underwhelming unless you use it as a sideboard card to actually get a problematic expensive bomb potentially away from the opponent's hand. But I wouldn't anymore want to main deck this. I want to use my mana for things that affect the board. And yes, there is a chance to get a 1/1 flyer out of this, but it is not going to be very often. So I don't think this is a card I necessarily even want to play in my black-white decks, and I definitely won't be picking this card as a high pick. At the 8th spot we have Insidious Roots, which of course can be the best card in your deck, but it's very hard to make this deck work. You need the correct kind of stuff to be open in the draft table, so that things like the Insidious Roots get passed to you, so that you don't have to first pick them from the packs. And also that the sets and uncommons, especially that fuel this archetype, are in the just in general opened in your draft table. There are more uncommons now in the booster packs, but there are also more uncommons in the sets. So it might even be that this archetype is open, but you don't get the tools to make it very good. Because the common support, there is some of that, but the best payoffs are at uncommon. So I don't consider this a very good card in terms of like a pack one, pick one situation. If you wanted to go for it and try to see if it's open, go ahead, but it's very kind of a risky thing to do. So this is on the 8th spot because the rest of the cards are just gonna be better in all situations. At the 7th spot I have a No More Lies, and this is I would say that from this point the cards are much closer to each other in terms of their desirability as opposed to the 3 first cards I showed you, because this is a totally decent card and I would never cut it from the blue-white deck if I'm playing those colors. It's just that I do prefer to be kind of a proactive rather than reactive, and then this spell needs to find a target, and even in some late game situations opponent might have the mana to pay for it. So of course that's always when you have a taxing counter spell, that's a problem, but this is of course very good on turns 2 to I don't know 5 to 6, but still It's a good card, and I would always play it in these colors, but I like the rest of the cards just more. At 6th spot, we have actually a very decent removal spell in that 3 mana sorcery speed, destroy target creature, and then maybe you have a suspected creature that you may grow, and even you may choose to make it no longer suspected if that's what you really want to do. But usually this is a destroy target creature for 3 mana. But it's just that it's not so good. It is a totally fine card. I will never cut it from my black and red decks. It's just not very exciting. And that's the reason it is on the 6th spot on this list. And at the 5th spot we have a Detective Satchel, which is a card that could be much stronger than the cards that are above this one in the list. In a similar way as the Insidious Roots. In the correct deck it can be really amazing. But this thing needs to needs some other certain stuff around it to make it really good. Because first of all, it's very slow. Basically, at 8 mana, you will get 2 cards and 2 1/1 flyers. Well, I mean, assuming you know just play this thing and then you have to crack the clues by paying the 2 mana. And of course, you don't get this in the same turn. So it's very slow. But of course, it becomes so much better if you first of all have other ways to get clues, which is easy when you play blue-red, and especially if you have other ways to sacrifice clues without paying the mana for it. And there are those ways too. And so you can combine this card with some other things, and this becomes really good. But in a pack one, pick one situation, I think the other cards in this list are kind of more desirable than this, because this does require a certain kind of other cards to make it really good. At the 4th spot, now these and the other cards in this list that are above it, they are not going to ask anything from you except that do you play these colors or not. These are just very, very good cards. The Repulsive Mutation is of course quite easy to make. Even though it's not a taxing, it is a taxing counterspell, just like a No More Lies is. It is quite easy to, make it so that the opponent will not have the mana to pay for it because of the, the tax value can be pretty immense with this thing, especially when you, get to grow your creature once you cast this. Now this can be risky if you have only one creature. And then the opponent, does something to your creature in response. But usually you will have more creatures, and especially if you have any disguised creatures that have Ward 2, the opponent might not have the mana to interact with it if you target it. So this is just a very nice kind of a 2-for-1 effect where you get to counter the spell and often give a sizable boost to one of your creatures. And I would say that even with X equals 2, it is sizable enough to make it worth something. It's an absolute, or it is definite a good upside when you play this at X equals 2. And sometimes you just play it at X equals 5, and that can be pretty pretty good as well. Now, don't also forget that this is not a counterspell necessarily. This can also just be played as a instant, put a number of counters to your creature, and that's a combat trick at that point. This says then counter up to 1 target spell, so you can cast this spell even when there is nothing else on the stack. So this is a double duty in that sense too. Very flexible card. But then at the 3rd spot, and I think it was quite hard to decide if I want to consider Repulsive Mutation better than this or not. I think they're very close to each other, but in the end I chose to put this above the Mutation because this asks even fewer questions than the Mutation. You just basically need to have the 5 mana available, and the opponent has to have some kind of creature, and then you can steal it and have this annoying 1/1 death toucher the opponent sometimes might actually need to trade a card with. So, but of course the more important part of this spell is that it's basically like a 5 mana sorcery, destroy their best creature, but you also get the 1/1 death toucher, which is which is if it said that if it was a 5/5 sorcery, destroy target creature and create a 1/1 death toucher, that would already be good. But note that the creature of course retains all its other abilities too, and it can be something good. That it can have a good passive effect, for instance, especially if it's something like a bomb rare of some sort. So this can be really good, but still there are two cards in this list that are even better in my opinion because they are just so flexible. Buried in the Garden, this says non-land permanent, so it deals with any kind of a problem except, well, land, I suppose, but lands aren't really problems in this set. And you get to also make this, this additional mana producing available, because there are some decks, and not only additional, but also, this taps for any color, the extra mana, I mean. So this is a card I would play at 4 copies in any deck, even though it's a 4 mana card. It is better than the Deadly Complication, even though it costs 1 more mana, because the flexibility of targeting any non-land permanent is significant, and also the extra mana is going to be significant too. And of course, Lightning Helix probably wasn't a big surprise. It is quite simple card. It doesn't give you any card advantage like the Detective Satchel can do, and Insidious Root can do, and Repulsive Mutation and the Cursed to Kill can give you, but this is just a matter of being extremely efficient thing, dealing 3 damage to any target including the opposing player for 2 mana and gaining 3 mana yourself. They are significant things both in a game of limited, especially because more or less, I mean, quite often the games will be some kind of race situations, especially if you're playing white-red. To have this card in your deck, you will be quite often just more interested in attacking, but of course the opponent is sometimes be able to attack back, maybe even hit harder, but the fact you can gain the 3 life while destroying one of their creatures is really nice, and this is the best card out of this group of cards. That's it, there's nothing else remaining here, but I want to still say that 2 of these cards can really, their value can be much better in a, let's say, pack 2, pack 3 situation, because the Detective Satchel can easily be better than any of the cards in this set, in this list, and the Insidious Roots can also be, even better than the Detective Satchel in some decks, but they are going to require some specific things around them, so that's why I kind of made this list based on the sort of desirability in a pack 1, pick 1 situation. This would be my tiebreaker if I open a booster pack that doesn't have a good rare, and if it's a pack from which I have to take a 2 mana card, usually you don't, 2 color card, which you don't usually want to do in a pack 1, pick 1 situation, because that kind of locks your colors a little bit, or the options. You're more likely to abandon a card that requires 2 specific mana. But anyway, if the situation was that the pack for some reason had a few of these cards available, which is possible of course, this would be my tiebreaker list of picking them in a pack 1, pick 1 situation. Alright, that's it, and I think I still have some other MKM, at least one other MKM kind of a cycle video idea, so maybe I will see you then, and in the meanwhile my drafts are still publishing on the channel, so check them out if you haven't. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.